Get along with you, retorted Peter, grinning. It's just as likely as not, said Bob. One of these days, though there's plenty of time for that.
So as you may be able to hear, we do have the codex stream train still going, and I decided that I had time to hop in and join one more.
This first parting that there was amongst us. Never, Father, they all.
Sorry, I need to have that on so I know where I am. So this is a bit more of an impromptu stream than usual. I am still in my pajamas, as is Crimbus time tradition. I'm hopping in so that this doesn't become just so much of a death march for Gariki. I was asleep for a good chunk of everybody else. Jev was streaming at a time that I could not be awake for. So I just figured I'd hop in because it's not as busy today, so I've got time. Oh, there we go. Raid. Watch those roll. What, 12 people? Wild.
Okay. Nearly 80%. So close, but.
My percentages are different than hers. Yeah, I'm at 82% on my screen, as you can see. Are you sure we're using the same version? Yeah, that's 82% on my screen, so I'll have to mention this to Arna when she drops by. That my percentages are maybe a little different than hers, so maybe we are accidentally using a different book, but I kept one eye on the lines. The cats have a little bit of a Zoom factor going on right now, so that's fun. There's Library. Hi, buds. You wanna come sit on Dad's lap for stream? No, I'm sniffing. I'm snorfing. Okay, we sniff, we snorf, we take those. What are we sniffing? We snorfing. Hello, everyone. Hello, Raiders. I'm picking up the train, even though I didn't plan on it. Arnold Quendy is raiding with a party of 12. My over-the-top alerts are a little busted. I have tried to fix them 4 times now, and they have not fixed themselves. So is this roughly where we left off? I was noticing that my percentages are a little different than RNL's. The last line I heard from stream was no, never, father. So keep that in mind. Bookending the streams, yeah, I'm the bookends. Look at me holding the books in place so the library workers can have ergonomic book movements. Yeah, 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 I'm important. My ISP is ISPing this morning very well, but have good sleep, LD Frostfall. Your username fits right in here. So I have a surprise. I have a surprise for my regular viewers. As you know, I'm a big wimp, and so this is very much important for me to show off to you all. Check this out. Let me see if I can move my arm here to get it a little better on camera. Because it's on my forearm in such a way that it is a little difficult to show off. But you got a notification and Twitch works. Good! As you can see, I have some ink. Don't tell my parents, it's a surprise for them. But, yeah, Raz, the community artist, drew this at my direction, so to speak. Wow, internet really is interneting tonight. this morning rather. I'm so used to being an evening streamer. Internet's interneting real good. Uh, but yeah, I had this. Raz drew this at my direction. I designed the sword, and gave her a few other hints because she just wanted something to draw. She was feeling like just drawing, and I was like, here, try this, and this is what came out of it. This guy. It's on my arm now, and that's the surprise. Other than bedhead and pajamas. Yes, stream elements. I am live. I've been live the whole time. Thank you for pointing that out. RNL, while I flicker in and out of tangibility here, what line did you leave off on? Because our percentages are different. In the same line as the stream from last night, this tea is the breakfast at Paris. It is bergamot, vanilla, lavender, black tea. So it's kind of an Earl Grey, but with vanilla and lavender, and it's very good. The only trouble being the vanilla means you can only use the leaves once, but it's in a tea bag anyway, so that's not the end of the world. You really uh, teabag tea just by nature kind of has smaller, dreg eater leaves. Uh, so, it just kind of comes with the territory that you probably don't want to use it more than once. But I appreciate everyone dropping by. Let's get into it, shall we? We're about 82% of the way through the book. I might be able to finish this and then like if Goriki exists, if that man is I might want to take my time. I'm very happy, said little Bob. I'm very happy. Okay, thank you for giving me that line, so I know what line is next. Um, yeah, I am debating whether I should drag my feet and give Goriki more time to sleep, or because probably at this point I could just pass it off to Goriki for the chimes if he's feeling up to it. Because that was the original plan, wasn't it? It was whoever, as far as you get Arno, uh, and then we pass it off to Gariki. Oh, I'm the caboose now. Fair for the chimes, but the passage of time has informed Gariki of a better path. Still unwell. Oh man, that's rough. I appreciate the frankly monumental amount of time you've put into this stream train already. It's a huge deal, and you kind of took the lead on organizing it, even though I'm sure this was kind of behind the scenes. All three of the codex heads, so to speak. That's a that's rough that you're feeling unwell. Like books, brews and books, brews and booze says. I hope you feel better soon, and I really appreciate the effort you've put into this. Let's get a little tea and then dive in, shall we? Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Very good. Exactly. Only happened because of Gariki. We're here because he's got the big brain. He thought of it. 3B B3 triple B books B cubes. I respond to all. I will probably go for books. Yeah, Gariki was really like putting in the legwork to fill in the gaps where people were like, "That's too late for my time zone." So we really appreciate you here, Gariki. Myself doubly so. Let's get started. Mrs. Cratchit kissed him. His daughters kissed him. The two young Cratchits kissed him, and Peter and himself shook hands. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence. Wow, I can speak this morning. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. tell me what man was that whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him as before, though at a different time, he thought. Indeed, there seemed no order in these latter visions, save that they were in the future, into the resorts of businessmen, but showed him not himself. Indeed, the spirit did not stay for anything, but went straight on as to the end just now desired, until besought by Scrooge to tarry for just a moment. This court through which we hurry now is where my place of occupation is, and has been for a length of time. I see the house. Let me behold what I shall be in the days to come. The spirit stopped, and the hand pointed elsewhere. The house is yonder. Why do you point away? The inexorable finger underwent no change. Yes, I am showing off a little bit while pointing. Scrooge hastened to the window of his office and looked in. It was an office still, but not his. The furniture was not the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. The phantom pointed as before. He joined it once again, and wondering why and whither he had gone, accompanied it until they reached an iron gate. He paused to look round before entering. A churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man whose name he had now to learn lay beneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life, choked up with too much burying, fat with repleted appetite, a worthy place. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. He advanced toward it, trembling. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw a new meaning in its solemn shape. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they shadows of the things that may be only? Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me. The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? He cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. Library is here to console us in this dire, dire moment. No, spirit, no. The finger was still there. Spirit, he cried, tight clutching at its robe. Hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? For the first time the hand appeared to shake. Good spirit, he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your nature intercedes for me, pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you've shown me by an altered life. The kind hand trembled. I will honor Christmas in my heart. Try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to save his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. I'm watching you on the biggest screen, says Arnell. This may be just like a vanity thing, but I love hearing when people are like, I put you on the television. I casted you to my big screen. I'm like, look, Mom, I'm on TV. I there's some like little part of my brain that's like, I'm on television. Wow. Every time, like people have said it like basically every stream that somebody mentions it, I am equally excited like, I'm on TV. Because the other times that I have properly been on television are few and far between, and in very different context. Um, I wish I could find the recording of it. I did a telethon once. Like I was part of a telethon. Like a family friend reached out and was like, a family friend reached out to my dad and was like, "Hey, Michael sings a lot, right?" And my dad was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I'm doing this telethon. Do you think you can prepare something?" And my dad told me, and I was like, "I know exactly what I'm doing." So I did like I prepared like an older country song, given the audience, where I live. And I did that on television. I didn't have any like I couldn't play guitar competently enough at that time, so it was just like a backing track that we had found somewhere, and I did a telethon, and that was super fun, and I wish I had the footage from it, but I can't dig it up. The other times I've been on television, I have footage for. They were when I did Allstate, which you might see occasionally. The things behind me, I was an Allstater for choir. Choir was my sport in high school, so I was on television for that. I think uh, I might have been on television for some college stuff too. That college choir stuff as well, because I leaned in on choir in college too. I was like a music theory, like two music theories and a music history away from having a music minor. If I had the patience to stay another like year at college, I would have done it. And I was only 3 years into college, but yeah, I can always go back and be like, hey, I want credits. Can I have my music minor? And I've been trying to learn music theory on my own as well. Anyway, Glacier Nestor as seen on television. Thank you. Now that I've pumped my ego up a bit, let us dive into what I presume is the final stave. Yes, the final stave, stave 5. There is a illustration of a dragon, a draconic-looking spirit rising from the steam and the fire of, I assume, a slice of pudding. Uh, it's got like a little draconic snout and like a little long tongue, and it's kind of scaly, and it's got its little claws going. They're all like hunched. They're like tensed and ready to get things at their shoulders, and there's two big fluffs of steam or smoke producing what you could easily read as wings. It's very pretty. The end of it. Yes. And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all. The time before him was his own once more to make amends in. I would live in the past, the present, and the future, Scrooge repeated as he scrambled out of bed. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven and the Christmas time be praised for this. I say it on my knees, oh Jacob, I say it on my knees. He was so fluttered and so glowing with his good intentions that his broken voice would scarcely answer to his call. He'd been sobbing violently in his conflict with the spirit, and his face remained wet with tears. They are not going down, cried Scrooge, folding one of the bed curtains in his arms. They're not torn down, rings and all, they are here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been are maybe dispelled. They will be, I know they will. His hands were busy with his garments all the time, turning them inside out, putting them on upside down, tearing them, mislaying them, making them parties to every kind of extravagance. I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath, and making a perfect lacoon of himself with his stockings. Question of the day, is that like a reference to something contemporary, or is that a has this book had the likely longest record time to disclaimer? Question of the day. Risky Google of the day. Oh, the statue of Laocoon and his sons, also called the Laocoon Group, has been one of the most famous ancient sculptures ever since it was excavated in Rome in 1506 and placed on public display in the Vatican museums, where it remains. Hellenistic period marble. Laocoon was a Trojan priest. Him and his two sons depicted were attacked by giant serpents sent by the gods. The story of Laocoon has been the subject of numerous artists, both in ancient and more contemporary artists. Classical depictions. The story is not mentioned by Homer, but it had been the subject of a now lost tragedy by Sophocles and was mentioned by other Greek writers, though the events around the attack by the serpents vary considerably. So why is this guy Laocoon is the source of the quote "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts"? Essentially, like translations of what he had said are why we have that phrase. Fascinating. I didn't know that. In Sophocles, however, he was a priest of Apollo who should have been celibate but had married. The serpents killed only his two sons, leaving himself alive to suffer. In other versions, he was killed for having committed an impiety by making love with his wife in the presence of a cult image, or simply making a sacrifice in the temple with his wife present. In the second group of versions, the snakes were sent by Poseidon, and the first by Poseidon and Athena, or Apollo. Athena or Apollo, and the deaths were interpreted by the Trojans as proof that the horse was a sacred object. The two versions have rather different morals. Laocoon was either punished for doing wrong or for being right. Fascinating. There are classical sources fragments here. Is an English diaeresis indicating that each of the two vowels should be sounded as separate syllables, so it's Laocoon rather than Laocoon, which is an umlaut. According to Virgil, Laocoon ductus Neptuno sorte sacerdos. Two serpents were sent to Troy across the sea from the island of Tenedos, where the Greeks had temporarily camped. You'll have to excuse my Latin pronunciation. The closest I've gotten to Latin is Church Latin. So, there is an asteroid named after Laocoon, 3204. Famously depicted in a much admired marble, attributed by Pliny the Elder to the Rhodian sculptors Aegisander, Athenodoros, and Polydoros, which stands in the Vatican museums. Copies have been executed by various artists, notably Baccio Bandinelli, got a few syllables backwards there. These show the complete sculpture with conjectural reconstructions of missing pieces and are located in Rhodes at the Palace of the Grand Master of the Knights of Rhodes in Rome, the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, and in front of the Archaeological Museum in Odessa, Ukraine, amongst many others. Alexander Calder also designed a stabile, which he called Laocoon in 1947. It's part of the Eli and Edith Broad collection in Los Angeles. Fascinating. I'm looking for here we are. In stave 5 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Scrooge awakes on a Christmas morning, making a perfect Laocoon of himself with his stockings. So I assume the picture that is brought to mind here is he is struggling with his Christmas stockings or maybe literally his feet stockings. He's struggling with these stockings as though they are snakes ready to pounce upon him and destroy him, is the image that's being brought to mind here. Very evocative if you know who this guy is. uh, Fascinating stuff. Also, I should note I was reading from Wikipedia there. So if you want a list of sources on the things I'm talking about to check if those are all real, you're gonna have to look at Wikipedia. I don't have time to exposit on sources this fine morning. As much as I probably will go look at the Wikipedia sources and dig further because this is a Greek myth that I had no idea existed. Like, it's not a shock. It's a myth in which a god is like, you did some things against a vow you have made to me, or against the rules of my temple, and now you explode. But like, you know, could come up in a future Percy Jackson book. You never know. Would love to have advanced knowledge for once. As soon as we got past the first series, and I was like, oh yeah, the big classics, and then like he starts pulling like more and more obscure myths for like later and later books, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening anymore, but I'm enjoying it anyway. Anyway, he's making a perfect Laocoon of himself with his stockings, like, ah! I was light as a feather, I'm happy as an angel, I'm merry as a schoolboy, giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody, a Happy New Year to the world. Hello there! Hello! Hello! I'm trying to... primary resource being the Aeneid, book 2, line 230. Thank you, RNL. That's probably a good place to start. Being a primary source, you usually kind of... There's two directions to go with falling into a research hole for something this old. It's either starting from the primary source and then moving forward to try and understand some of the context of, like, some of the context that is then implied by secondary and tertiary sources. Although, you start like, oh, this, and then you start layering context on top of it, or you go the other way and start digging through layers of context to get back to the main source. Either direction is fun, honestly. Can you tell I like to research things in my spare time for fun? RNL says that primary resource is the mention of Laocoon and its myth. And his myth, rather. Noted. Very handy. Is the Aeneid... I'm saying that wrong. Aeneid in, on Gutenberg? I'm sure it's easy to find elsewise. It's literally ancient. Anyway, he had frisked himself into the living room and was now standing there perfectly winded. There's that saucepan the gruel was in, cried Scrooge, starting off again and going round the fireplace. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the door where the ghost of Christmas present sat. There's the window where I saw the wandering spirit. It's all right, it's all right, it's all true, it's really happened. Really, for a man who had been out of practice for so many years, it was a splendid laugh, a most illustrious laugh, the father of a long, long line of brilliant laughs. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello! Hello! He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he's ever heard. Clash, clash, hammer, ding, dong, bell. Bell, ding, dong, hammer, clash, clash. Oh, glorious, glorious! Returning to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist. Clear, bright, jovial, stirring, even cold. Cold, piping for the blood to dance to. Golden sunlight, heavenly sky, sweet fresh air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. RNL with the Gutenberg link. Do I just generally have links on, or is Gutenberg a whitelisted link? Hopefully Gutenberg is a whitelisted link. I'm gonna click this. real quick? Is this just... Yeah, it is. There we go. Yeah, this would take me 1,000 years to get through on paper cuts, but it's good to know that it exists. Roundabout here for anyone curious. Thank you very much for the annotation, RNL. That genuinely very helpful. Some reading for your Christmas morning, Christmas Eve morning after we're done here. "What's today?" cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in his Sunday clothes, who perhaps loitered in to a look about him. "Eh?" returned the boy with all might of wonder. "What's today, my fine fellow?" "Today? Why, it's Christmas Day." "It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello." "Hello," returned the boy. "Do you know the poulterer is in the next street but one at the corner?" "I should hope I did." "An intelligent boy, remarkable boy even. Do you know whether they've sold that prize turkey that was standing up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one." "What? The one as big as me?" "What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my young buck." "It's hanging there now." "Is it? Go and buy it." "Walker." No, I'm in earnest. Go, buy it. Tell them to bring it here, that I may give them the directions where to take it. Come back with the man, I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him less than 5 minutes, I'll give you half a crown." The boy was off like a shot. He must have had a steady hand to the trigger who could have cut off a shot half as fast. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's." Scrooge whispered and rubbed his hand and splitted with a laugh. "You shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's will be." The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. Library very insistent on right-clicking some things, excuse me. As he stood there waiting his arrival, the knocker caught his eye. "I shall love it as long as I live," cried Scrooge, patting it with his hand. "I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello! How are you? Merry Christmas!" It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He'd have snapped them short off in a minute like sticks of sealing wax. For those of you unaware of sealing wax, they're literal, like, little, usually red sticks of sealing wax that you would melt over a candle until you have, like, a little melted blob at the beginning, and then drip it over the letter, and then press it down with a seal. Nowadays, we usually have, if we're going to bother with sealing things, we have a little sealing wax spoon and little, like, wax granules. There's a whole, like, intricate layer of expectations about the color of sealing wax, and there are documented cases of people apologizing, especially for the shock if they use black sealing wax. Black sealing wax was reserved for things like death announcements and, you know, very dire news. And so there's a letter extant somewhere that I think you might be able to see in, like, some museum, where someone is apologizing for apologizing for the shock of using black sealing wax because they were out of the more standard colors. And so they're like, "Listen, nothing's wrong, nothing's happening. Breathe first," essentially. You know, they were putting it much more period language, but it's kind of like someone of my age or younger actually calling someone on the phone and initially leading with "everything's fine." You know, calling unannounced. It's like if my younger brother called me unannounced, like he did not text me, he did not message me. You know, he's younger than me, so he's very used to just sending a text for small things. It's like he calls me, you know, late at night, and he has to lead with "everything's fine," because if I'm getting a call from my younger brother unannounced at like 3 in the morning, I'm assuming someone has died or something's on fire. So that's basically the same sort of, like, tone that's being used, like, "I didn't have anything but black sealing wax, I'm sorry." You know? Anyway. distracted by sealing wax. "Why, it's impossible to carry that to Camden Town. You must have a cab." The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the turkey, and the chuckle with which he paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he recompensed the boy were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled until he cried. Shaving was not an easy task, for his hand continued to shake very much. Shaving requires attention, even when you don't dance while you're at it. But if he'd cut the end of his nose off, he would have put a piece of sticking plaster over it and been quite satisfied. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant in word that 3 or 4 good-humoured fellows said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that, of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, that those were the blithest in his ears. He had not gone far when, coming on toward him, he beheld the portly gentleman who had walked into his counting-house the day before and said, Scrooge and Marley, they believe." It sent a pang across his heart to think how this old gentleman would look upon him when they met, but he knew what path lay straight before him, and he took it. "My dear sir," said Scrooge, quickening his pace, and taking the old gentleman by both his hands. "How do you do? I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Mr. Scrooge?" "Yes, that is my name. I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon, and will you have the goodness—" And here Scrooge whispered in his ear. "Lord bless me!" cried the gentleman, as if his breath were taken away. "My dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?" "If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?" "My dear sir," said the other, shaking hands with him, "I don't know what to say to such a beautification." "Don't say anything, please. Come and see me. Will you come and see me?" "I will," cried the old gentleman, and it was clear that he meant to do it. "Thank you. I'm much obliged to you here. I thank you 50 times. Bless you." He went on to the church and walked about the streets and watched the people hurrying to and fro, patted the children on the head and questioned beggars, and looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows, and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He could never have dreamed that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon he turned his steps toward his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock, but he made a dash and did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. "Nice girl, very nice." "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" "He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please." "Thank you. He already knows me," said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear." He turned it gently and sidled his face in round the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in a great array, for these young housekeepers are always nervous on such points, and like to see that everything is right. "Friend," said Scrooge, dear heart alive, how his niece by marriage started. Scrooge had forgotten, for the moment, about her sitting in the corner with a footstool, or he wouldn't have done it on any account. "Why, bless my soul, who's that?" "It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I've come to dinner. Will you let me in? Fred, will you?" And there's an illustration of Scrooge in his Sunday best, clearly much shriveled by the taxing night he has had, but still clearly doing his best to be spreading the beautiful, bountiful Christmas cheer that he's learned over the night. And Fred and his wife, both looking rather confused as there's a large spread upon the table, as described. Have we already gone past the bit about smoking steaming bishop? Have we missed that bit? I actually watched a video from Tasting History on steaming bishop, I believe last year. Good stuff. Very fun to learn. There's this fascinating trend of vintage punch making, at that time, that I could dive into, but I don't. I want to wait until it's appropriate if we haven't talked about the steaming bishop. It's your Uncle Scrooge. I've come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred? Let him in. It's a mercy you didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be hard here. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came, and so did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If only he could be first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he'd set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. A quarter past. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open that he might see him come into the tank. His hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. Growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice as near as he could feign it. What do you mean by coming here this time of day? I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time. You are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please. It's only once a year, sir, pleaded Bob, appearing from the tank. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir. Now I'm going to tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, he continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, and therefore I am about to raise your salary. Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him, and calling to the people in the court for help in a strait waistcoat. Merry Christmas, Bob, said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken as he clapped him on the back. Merry Christmas, my good fellow, that I've given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavour to assist your struggling family. We'll discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires, fry another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. Smoking bishop incoming, as Arnell has called out. Smoking bishop, for context, is kind of like it is a punch of a sort. They would, this is a faint memory, so excuse me if I get any details wrong, but essentially they would heat this sort of like punch thing that's got like wine and fruits and all sorts of merriment in it, and heat it until it is smoking or steaming, and it's described as a bishop because some of the fruit, particularly oranges that were floating in there, would be studded with cloves in some kind of Catholic fashion. And so it brings to mind bishop. Mix of wine, oranges, and sugar. Thank you. I was missing the sugar. They would use, like, cloves were expensive, still are expensive, but they would stick whole cloves into the oranges to draw decorative patterns, which that actually, those oranges separate from the bishop actually still remain a Christmas tradition in several European countries. And it's something that I've been considering doing. Because I like oranges. I love cloves. Cloves are like a flavor that like perfectly fits my tongue, so to speak. I'm a lover of cloves. I'm a lover of bergamot. And so made by pouring red wine or port, either hot or cold, upon ripe bitter oranges. Bergamot, for example, is a bitter orange. You probably should not eat the flesh of a bergamot orange, but you can express the oil from the bergamot orange, and it will be beautiful. The liquor is mulled. Correct. Yeah, it is essentially a type of mulled wine. Usually, when we picture mulled wine in our modern mind's eye, if we even picture it at all, because most people don't do it anymore, it's kind of like oranges and cinnamon and cloves and cardamom and allspice and nutmeg. Very, very spice heavy. I love mulled cider, and despite the fact that I don't drink, I have a fondness for the concept of mulled wine. I'm I was very tempted this year to get one of those bottles of de-alcoholized wine, zero proof wines. Star Anise, thank you. Star Anise is another good ad. But I was thinking about mulling a one of those zero proof wines, and I've heard I was talking about mulled wine at length in a Discord I was in, and someone mentioned, yeah, we just keep it in the crock pot. I was like, that's big brain, because then it stays at the right mulled wine temperature the whole day. Very here for it. If I had not gotten myself snowed in, it is sometimes called purple wine. Nice. That's a good descriptor. Uh, but if I had not gotten so thoroughly snowed in, I was going to go to there's a store locally that sells these that stocks very thoroughly these non-alcoholic spirits and wines, and I was going to get a bottle. Received the name Bishop from its color. Okay, so I was wrong about the cloves. Making pictures is why it's called Bishop. Fascinating. But I digress. Let's keep going. Here's Scrooge saying, "Oh, Callure. It is technically Callure with a U in context." Also, I want to know if this is a myth or not. Did we really, in American English, remove the U because newspapers newspapers charged by the letter, and like because the spelling of English was not fully settled at that time? Uh, is that why we removed the U and it stuck here? Like, is that a myth? I've heard it repeated a million times, but I've never heard a source. RNL taking text from the annotated copy. I really appreciate that. Those are fantastic annotations. I should see if I can rustle up that annotated copy, because every annotation I have heard is solid and fantastic. Anyway, now we have the illustration of Scrooge being like, "No, I'll tell you what," and talking about, "I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer." But that's what the illustration was there. And sort of poking him in the chest like, "No." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, mind, he was a second father. He became as good as a friend, as good as a master, and as good as a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world, for that matter. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards, and it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that truly be said of us, and of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, "God bless us, everyone." And we have a little illustration of a candle with its little snuff hat on, and the smoke extends upward, and the camera follows the smoke upward further and further into the sky as we zoom in and find a little snowflake. And that's the shot we fade to black on. That has been a Christmas Carol. Courtesy of Project Gutenberg, and most especially courtesy of my fellow members of the Codex. Really, I showed up at the beginning and the end. I didn't do that much. But the rest of the Codex gang really putting in the hours and the legwork to make sure this train got as far as it did. Really, I already am very grateful for you all in the Codex Discord very thoroughly. You all do incredible work putting the the idea of read streams into other people's minds, really selling this idea that, you know, we can read aloud and have it be entertainment. And the fact that we have all kind of grown together into some kind of confederated community is is a very good thing for me to reflect upon. And I'm glad to have you all here. And I really, really loved. Yeah, we read twice through without stopping. Arnell is correct. There was a whole second reading of the book that I was asleep for. We went that long. This was fantastic. I love this. This is so much like the concept of this raid train. So good. We actually like are rising tide lifting all boats each other. And we really need to find more excuses to do this because it's so much easier to schedule too. I think our international members in Goriki in Japan and Jev in NZ, and I think there was one other person in the middle there, and just our night owls, really the night crew, really putting in the heavy lift. The night crew, from my perspective, mind, really putting in the midnight oil here. Fantastic stuff. I think we need to find more excuses to do this. We should maybe we'll talk about this in the Codex Discord. Gariki had some ideas that I really liked. I have some ideas that I'd love to sit on. It's great to have lofty goals, and even if you don't meet them, you reach higher than you would alone. Precisely. I love this as an idea. I have been on record as saying that I want to go to book club every month, and then it's pretty consistently at a time that I can't make. So having a second option for a group project with the Codex is so nice. We need to do more of this. Also, happy Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. I'm early, but happy Christmas to everybody. So thank you so much for tuning into this long raid journey. We've managed to keep 10 of 10 numbers wise throughout the whole train, to my understanding. I appreciate you all very much. For tuning in to not just me, but everyone else along the train and people ducking in and out as they need to get some sleep. I really just appreciate every ounce of support that you've given this, and I hope we can keep doing it. I hope you all have a very happy Christmas. I hope you have time with your loved ones, whether that's friends or family. And most of all, I hope you all have wonderful Christmas dinner. Make something good for me. I am going to go wrap presents now, and and yes, in the words of Tiny Tim, Merry Christmas and God bless us, everyone. See you around, everyone. This was so nice.